Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. A lot of big, I guess, pretty much smoke out of Pittsburgh right now. We're going to get into that in a second. But first, Matt, you messaged today that Claysburg was going to have a vote on their new field surface. And you said it's going to be grass versus turf. And you said, I hope they pick the right one. But I want to know, what do you think is the right surface?
I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer that it's turf.
And by turf, you mean AstroTurf, right?
Yes. Not like your grandma's front porch turf, but the better quality, newer stuff that they have.
Well, that's not AstroTurf, is it?
No, I mean, it's the synthetic turf. It's whatever the newest model of it is. That's basically what we're going with, if that's approved.
Because I played on some pretty rough AstroTurf back in Mansion Park days. And I will say, that's not fun.
No, it's different than the old Mansion Park ones.
Because that was one that you could slip and slide on. Like you could hit and you would just slide as you're going for a tackle. And if you didn't have your knee pads in, you would just be like your knees would just be cut off.
Right.
Like that, I think that's what they used for the Expos in baseball in Canada, like back in the 90s. And the ball would had a high bounce and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and like the old Houston Oilers.
Yeah, that's true. That is what they use there too. So the new stuff, for people that don't really pay that close attention, it is almost like the grass carpets where it's like the plastic grass type feel, but instead of having the hard surface, don't they chip rubber and put that down too?
Yes.
Because I played on that in Johnstown. Johnstown had a field, and these are high schools in Pennsylvania because I know we have listeners across the United States. But their field, they were one of the first ones in the area that I knew of that got it. And it was a much softer playing surface. I didn't like how stuff kicked up on you because I played baseball on something like that too, where I don't remember if it was in Florida or Virginia, but one of our spring trainings in college, we played on it, I think. And it every time the ball would hit, you would have a little bit of stuff that kicked up. And I guess over time that would end up not happening. But with a lot of these newer fields, you have to break them in. At least that's my knowledge of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think is going on too, because once you get the pellets kind of packed in, it's not as much of an issue.
But how long do they last then?
I forget off the top of my head how often you're supposed to resurface it, but I don't think that it's comparable to a lot of the grass surfaces. Like when you look at completely redoing a grass field and you're updating the drainage and tearing the field up and putting drainage in and doing all the other maintenance work to it, in addition to the amount of money that you're going to spend on paint and lawn care stuff and the staff to maintain the field, you're looking at all these extra costs of maintaining grass versus the turf, where you're not having to do as much maintenance to the playing surface.
But you also don't have that control though. If you had a good groundskeeper, you had a fast team coming in, you could let the grass grow a little bit higher, slow them down, give your team the home field advantage it really deserves that.
Our team would have the home field advantage because we would be the only team in our conference that has a turf playing surface.
Yeah, but that's just the consistent field. I think most people, the only one that I think that it would really affect is a kicker. Possibly a punter, because whenever they launch, they need their plant foot to be consistent. And I know that it has a little bit more of a springy feel. But I've never really seen anyone wipe out, at least a punter, where his plant foot just slipped out. I've seen kickers fall. So maybe it affects them more. I don't know.
Well, I look at it too from the standpoint of how many injuries happen because through the course of a football season and you're playing on grass, you try not to tear up the same sections of grass, but inevitably there's patches that always end up just getting completely tore apart, and there ends up being these big divot holes from players like kicking up clumps of dirt. That does that lead to player injuries and other issues that I think that that's part of it. That if you have that game field that's turf and you're able to maybe eliminate some of those other issues, like those other injuries because of rolling ankles and stuff on uneven grass.
Well, on a serious note, I know that when you brought up cost, that's probably a big factor because a lot of like high schools they used to have a groundskeeper. I don't even know if they have that anymore. A lot of them have just been dominated by what parking lots, and then you still have people that run the grounds, but they're probably doing double time with other facilities and things like that, just like a facilities manager. But that would cut down on costs and maintenance. And the one thing, like I think we shared our field with the soccer team. We played on grass in about October. It would just be completely torn apart. Where and there was like a crest on it to make sure that, like the water was running off, and so the middle of the field where it was highest, always dirt. Halfway
Yep.
through the season, through the rest of the season, like they could never get the grass to grow because you're basically going into winter, so it's not like a great growing season for grass anyway. It's
Well,
not
and
like a pro where they're going to be bringing in their own turf and laying it down, like sod, I guess, not turf.
when we also had a situation a couple years ago where the we had a unusual amount of rain during the season, and so between the varsity, the JV, the junior high, and some of our lower level, grade level elementary teams playing on it, it was completely a mess, and there was nothing that you could do to try to get it drained off correctly. So I think like just from that standpoint of wear and tear on your home field, there was no home field advantage for us because it was just a complete like it actually it hurt us in a lot of ways because of us trying to play tempo and trying to play fast. That muddier surface really hurt us, even though you know the the roots wing tee they're ground and pound oriented offense. I mean, to me, with us evolving with the athletes that we have, we want to take advantage of our speed and space, and we weren't able to do that on a grass field.
Yeah, I could see that. I forgot even about having like the junior varsity and stuff. And I know that we always tried to do walkthroughs or at least one practice a week on our field. So you were at least consistent with it. But I know that we were still limited based on we didn't want to put too much wear on it because it would wear it out. So I'd see
But
a
I think
lot
if
more
you,
other high schools because you said you'd be the only ones in your conference with it, right?
yes,
Yeah, I could see a lot other ones just going to it just because of that. You don't have to worry about paying for like the grass seed and all of that other stuff, the fertilizer to keep it to grow, cutting it all the time. Like it just makes sense. You can kind of just set it and forget it for now. I mean, I know that there's still maintenance and you have to drain it, and you possibly have to replace some of the rubber stuff, but I don't know how expensive that would get, especially if they're just recycling old tires or something. I don't know.
well, I think the other draw too is that if you have that kind of if you have a turf surface and you paint it correctly, now you can host not only football but in our school district we co-op with another high school for soccer. So now we would definitely have the upgraded facilities that it would be worth not only hosting the soccer matches at our field, but in addition, you could host playoff games, even within District 5 or District 6. That can become a venue that other people want to play games at. That's going to draw, more people from the community to the area and really give the town um, something to hang their hat on and really be proud of.
Yeah, I could see that being a big selling point just for other sports. And even if you're trying to get like neutral site games and stuff just to get extra revenue, that could be big. Because I know high school football started down here in North Carolina, and some of the facilities and schools, they're not hosting. They're looking for like a third party to like find a game, like a neutral site that they don't have to worry about like doing the COVID cleansing and things like that. Disinfecting, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So that could always be a thing if you have a good, nice enough field. I know Johnstown, when they rolled theirs out, they hosted a bunch of games like the Ken Lancey game and stuff like that. So you always have
Absolutely.
options for that. Let's see. So they also tore out your bleachers, right?
Yes, we had the old concrete bleachers that it was just due for an upgrade. I mean, I think to be able to have more handicap accessible seating, because from the stadium, if you haven't been to our field, shame on you because you should. But it's on a big hill, so there's a giant slope. So if you have any kind of like wheelchair accessibility, you're flying down off the hill.
Well, speaking of your field, now that I remember it, I think I played baseball there. Wasn't the football field part of the baseball field?
Yes,
So what's going to happen to that?
they're going to adjust where they have everything positioned, and they would be able to accommodate turf for the baseball field and football field.
So the whole thing's going to be turf.
Yes.
Because didn't the one bleacher move? Like, was it the visitor side?
Yeah, they adjusted. So they would have the seating for baseball, and then they'd bring it out, like not into the infield, but like past the dirt part for
Yeah.
seating from the football.
I knew they like rotated it or whatever and then put up the temporary fence. I just couldn't remember how it was. So that's probably
Yep.
easier for them to move stuff around too on the turf than sliding it through the grass and then having to dig that out because I would assume that would be a mess.
Absolutely.
Are you guys upgrading your press box with that?
Oh yeah. Press box is getting upgraded, and along with some of the talks, there's conversations of having a standalone field house too, to accommodate uh, bathrooms, locker rooms, things like that, that will just make it so much nicer. And the upgrade to the much needed weight room.
That's good. I like the field house idea instead of having people like go to like the high schools or whatever to change. I don't even know if you're as close. I can't remember. Is that where your locker rooms
Yeah.
are now?
Yeah, well, our locker rooms right now are right off. They're in the building, right behind the stadium. So
Okay.
being able to have that separate, I mean, in a COVID era, they can accommodate for more social distance spacing with the building plans, and be able to maintain, like, have spaces for the kids to get ready that aren't necessarily on, like, in the school grounds. They can dismiss at the end of the day, go to the field house for practice, and then that gives the custodian staff opportunities to clean out more of the spaces, as opposed to using like the locker room and or my office where we were using for meetings. I mean, that kind of frees up some extra space too.
Yeah, that'd be good. Make things easier, and like you said, be able to separate. So that's all. That's all good. So you have to keep us updated on how that goes um, as as you get more clarification on what's going to happen with it.
Sounds good.
All right, getting into the NFL now. Juju and Connor. I've been kind of slamming Juju, not so much Connor. Connor, I'll say this: it doesn't really matter to me. It's almost like if he left, because the Steelers, it looks like the Steelers are unlikely to re-sign Juju and Connor, which I think were going to happen. And I apologize to the podcast listeners because I know we get a ton of just audio downloads after the fact. I talked about the uncertainty with Ben. They must have watched the show last week because the Steelers owner on Wednesday morning, when this show was rolling out on iTunes and whatever platform you listen on, the Steelers owner put out the message that they are looking to re-sign Ben. So my speculation on that, if you listen in the after fact, you're probably like, what's he talking about? But there was no clarification when we did the show. But now we know for sure they're trying to bring Ben back, and that causes some major issues. Because at one point, even and we're going to talk about J.J. Watt later with him signing with Arizona, but there was one point where the Steelers were the Vegas betting odds favorites on landing him because I think a lot of people figured that Ben was gone, and we were getting a lot of mixed messages on him. But now it seems like they're going ahead. My confidence for the season, probably last week was a little bit more negative. I'd say about a 5. And with a 5, I would say a decent chance to win the division again, maybe a playoff game, but that's it. Like, that's the ceiling, I think. It's not like I'm coming into the season at like a 9 or a 10 where the expectation Super Bowl. I don't think with the re-signing of Ben, and now you're going to have to try to bring offensive weapons around him with no cap space. I don't know how much the coronavirus and shutting games down and not letting fans in affected the salary cap for this year, but they knew it was going to be tight. There's no way. I mean, they could possibly try to franchise tag Juju, but I think the number they're $14 or $15 million still over the cap, even if Ben takes a cut. I mean, with him it was going to be 30 or something. So I think that's the last I saw, and we don't know yet because we said that the season starts here, and I think in 2 weeks the next NFL season officially starts, where these moves are going to be made. But most franchises kind of talk to players or try to get a feel, and players give heads up, like J.J. Watt, like let them know ahead of time where he's going to sign, so that they can try to make other moves around him. So like Ben, they told him we're bringing you back. Dobbs is a free agent, so right now the quarterback room might just be Roethlisberger, Rudolph, and Haskins, which to me seems all right. I don't know if you really need a fourth quarterback to come in and push for minutes. I mean,
No.
you need one on the practice squad, but I would think that Dobbs is gone just because you're already over. Why not? Then you're looking at Connor. Like I said, I don't really care. Like, it's not like I've been watching him and think like, oh, that's a great running back. We should really re-sign him. It's almost like, all right, you could pretty much plug and play anyone in and get similar stats. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that there's a chance that they bring back Le'Veon Bell? Because I saw some smoke on that.
I would be surprised if they brought him back just because of the issues that they had getting him signed in the first place and him holding out and everything else. I think that ship's kind of sailed. Um, as far as Connor and Schuster, with Connor, the issue was always the inconsistencies with his health. So when he was healthy, I felt like he contributed a good bit. But it was like his play was so spotty because he was always dealing with some type of injury that, maybe we need to send him to Tom Brady's camp to figure out how to be healthy. With Juju, I mean, I think the issues, whether they keep him, whether he walks, I think they need to figure out what's going on with the wide receivers coach and to try to get some more consistency there because for all the drops and for all the other stuff, like it wasn't just one player. It was consistently across the board. That was a group that had a lot of talent, but just wasn't getting it done. So, my initial reaction is to find the coach in charge of them and get to the bottom of it because that to me that's where some of those issues lie. That their coach had passed away, and then it was like trying to deal with the replacement, and they weren't playing to that standard.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to think. Like, my main point with the receivers are, it seems like Ben elevates the play. I know there were troubles with drops with was it Johnson. I think he led the team, and maybe some with Ebron too. But was it Vance McDonald that retired? So that
Yeah.
opened up a little bit of extra space. Maybe they can get Ben a little bit under. I don't know. But with Juju, if you're going to end up paying him what he wants to be paid, it's not going to work. Like, you're almost saying like, okay, we're going to sign him, and then that's it. Like I would think that at that point, if you bring back like Bud Dupree or some other one that's going to be a high price free agent, like that's it. You're not going to be able to get Ben any other weapons. At that, I think you would have to give up Connor at that point, which we said. Let's see. The running game hasn't been good. Maybe it has been the injuries. Maybe it's been the scheme. I don't know, but it seems like no one can run the ball. So why even risk throwing money at it at a running back at this point? Like you had a chance last year. That's why the Fournette deal, to me, you're taking a gamble on a guy you can get for cheap. How do you know that didn't pay off last year? Steelers couldn't run. If they could run even a little bit, that was a team that started undefeated through what, 11 weeks? Like, how about you take, if you're able to run the ball, maybe your guys don't take as many hits and maybe the offense stays fresh because they became so one-dimensional. Once everyone got the playbook on what their tendencies were, Ben just started turning the ball over. They couldn't run the ball to control it against these weaker teams. You get in the playoffs, you get into a shootout, you still can't run the ball. It's like, all right, season over. Let's start over and do what? I think that's why I'm at a 5. You have to make some of these moves, but you're hoping that you catch lightning in a bottle in the draft or what? You're not going to sign any big-time free agents with your salary cap situation. So there's going to be no positivity. I mean, maybe you'll get the excitement of having fans back in the stands if things keep going the way they are. But some teams, I think Oklahoma City, the Thunder, announced they're not having fans at their games next year, which to me seems crazy. Like you're months out, and that's the announcement you make. Alabama announced they're going to have 100% capacity right now.
Mississippi and Texas did the same thing. Texas just announced today that they're unlocking the state. No mask mandates, no nothing.
Well, Pennsylvania right now is what, at 20% outdoor?
Yeah, so, it's like 25, I think.
I don't know. I know they just listed in there talking about it, but it's right now it's nowhere near what it could be. Especially like in an outdoor stadium, you would think that they'd be able to allow more people in just because of the built-in distancing. But I don't know. That could add another level of excitement to Pittsburgh, but if you're playing in a dead stadium with basically the same team, I know, like I said, they went undefeated. You might be good at the beginning of the year, but what changes have you put in place to do the Tom Brady like I brought up? And I know some people hate Tom Brady, but like look at it. He's 40-something years old. He made dramatic changes in his life. People laughed at his diet when that came out a few years ago. And they were like, this guy's crazy. He's like getting in. It was almost like one of those multi-level marketing schemes. That's what everyone was thinking that he was doing. Like he's lost it. And then it worked for him. And now he's like out and talking about next year and how their team's looking awesome and how he's ready. He thinks they're going to have a really great chance to repeat. It's like the dude is focused. That's all he cares about is winning. And you don't have that leadership right now in Pittsburgh. Or at least if you have, we haven't seen it. At least not since the Hines Ward years. It's been a long time.
Right.
I don't know what else. So if you're looking at this, I'm hoping that there are some changes that come up in the next couple weeks and we'll get some clarification on some roster moves. Maybe they can bring in some veteran guys. Like I really like the Ebron move. It seemed to really pay off with the offense, but like the drops killed them. And then the wide receiver, you let Juju go. Like my goal would be to let him go because he's had his chances past year. I don't know what his stats were in the playoffs game, but he wasn't showing up to be a number one receiver. He just wasn't. So let's go ahead and see if you can get I don't even know if you need a number one receiver, but just get another veteran out there that could pull the locker room together, that's not going to be divisive. Like Smith-Schuster, he's dancing, doing all this stuff, and it's not helping the team. Like, let's be honest.
I mean, I think it helps when they used him in that role where he could play in the slot, where he didn't have to be the guy. I think when they forced him into that role of Antonio Brown left and he had to step up to be the main number one guy, I don't know that he was good enough to be that true number one. Now I do think with Claypool, I think he has the potential to be that bigger body guy that Roethlisberger likes. But I think he could be your one and being able to move those guys around a little bit more. That may be if they were to resign Juju might be a better fit for him. You know, having a new offensive coordinator and being willing to move guys in different places, that would be a way to get him more touches in space to kind of um, play more to his strengths as opposed to having him just be more the vertical stretch guy.
And looking at the playoff stat, because I don't want to just like talk trash on him, he did have 157 yards and a touchdown in the playoff game. Deontay Johnson also had 117. But for that amount of like production in the regular season, he had 831 yards. Did he play in every game? I mean, there were some games where, yeah, I guess he did. I mean, there were some games where he just didn't show up. So, like, you have a 19-yard game against Jacksonville. I know they won. It's like the games where they were winning, they weren't relying on him as much. Later in the season, targets increased, tried to air it out, like you said. You have that big key fumble still, which were my big things for him. But like, let's see what happens. Like, I want to see a more consistent guy. Like, your number one receiver should not be only receiving for 37 yards in a Baltimore Ravens rivalry game. Like, that just shouldn't happen. 37 yards. What do you have? The Washington loss, he had 28 yards. Like, the playoff game is an anomaly because it was 48-37. The Steelers were down 28-0. So, of course, whenever they go in the prevent, he's going to pick up yardage. But, like, what about the other big games throughout the season? Like, what about a game that could have got them the bye? They lose to the Bengals. He has 15 yards receiving that. It's just not worth it to pay for that. It's just not.
Oh, I'm not arguing that, but I think you know it's tough to really be overly critical of Pittsburgh because when they were winning, it was they had a healthy team, and then their defense got completely sapped, and then they ended up having to play the try to win it through score like getting into these shootout style games, and it's tough to win that way. Like you can win, but you're not going to win at a championship level. The teams that win in the that made the deeper playoff runs and did more in the playoffs were the teams that were able to run the ball and have that more balance, like you said.
And looking at the tag, if they decided to tag him, that's $16 million. Like, it's just not worth it. I would almost rather have them try to work something out in the running game and try to get that consistency. And like I said, just bring in a couple veteran receivers for cheap or just draft. It seems like they're able to make good decisions in the draft in terms of receivers because their last couple receivers have all hit. I mean, I wouldn't even say the last couple. Like, they've had a lot of big time receivers going back to like Mike Wallace and all them. It's like, okay, like they've had guys that are going to move. Juju should be be able to produce somewhere else. Antonio Brown, like those are guys that the Steelers have been able to find and then turn into successful players. So that's what I want to see them do. I want them to go out, try to get under the cap without bringing back guys that, I mean, didn't add anything to the team in terms of locker room stuff, and try to get some of those leaders in that are going to say, like, look, all I want to do is win. Even Juju now, he talks about, like, oh, I want to be back on the team. My list is I want a good quarterback, I think is what he said. I want to make sure that if I'm going to sign with the team, they have a good quarterback. It's like nothing to do about winning, like trying to find a team that he can win on. Where if you look at what Tom Brady said last year, it wasn't like, oh, I need to go to a team with a good wide receiver. He's like, no, I want to go to a team I can win the Super Bowl with. Like, very different mindsets to me. So, I mean, at some point you want to win. I guess if you try to just focus on getting a quarterback that can get you stats, it might help you blow up personally. And that's the mindset that I don't think the Steelers need right now. Because, like, at Ben, like, why does he need another receiver that just needs stats? Like, it hasn't helped him. His legacy now is going to be stuck around forever. He won back in the day. I mean, at least he didn't have a big drop off like Eli Manning, where he was getting replaced halfway through the season. But I just don't see any other positives to it. Next weekend, we'll take a little bit deeper look, or next week, I mean, on next week's show, we'll take a little bit deeper look on the defense, possibly have a little bit more clarification here on what moves Pittsburgh's looking to do. They've been pretty quiet right now, but they have some decisions to make. And I think the defense, to me, is more key because if Ben is going to be there, like, you still have a chance to win with him, even though it might not be high confidence for me. The defense still has to be able to get stops and keep them in games. And then at some point, like I said, going down the stretch, you're losing to bad teams like the Bengals. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You need guys on the offense that just veterans, guys that know how to get open and can get more than 50 yards in games that matter. So that's it. Oh, geez, my thing's going off. So going into J.J. Watt talk now, I will say here with Arizona, are you surprised by that signing?
I was a little bit, just because with his comments of saying he wanted to go to a place where he could win right away. I mean, I think Arizona's close, but I don't know that they're at the point that they're going to make that jump. Like, I think when you look at the teams that potentially could get over the hump with him, looking at Buffalo, looking at Cleveland, I think they were a little bit closer in terms of needing that one last piece, that maybe he could have been that last component to that team. But I was surprised that that's where he ended up. I think it's ironic because he's back with DeAndre Hopkins, and now both of them are going to be teaming up against the Texans this year.
Well, everyone kind of thought that he made a decision a long time ago, but just based on his comments, he was pretty open on social media with what he was thinking. And he announced the finalists of like Green Bay, Cleveland, and Buffalo, which I think you mentioned. And then out of the blue, he just signed with Arizona instead. Like, I don't really think that he was trying to throw people off. I wonder if the Hopkins connection and some of the late term pitch that he got, like he said he got some from Kyler Murray and stuff, where, hey, like, help us get the ball. We have a dynamic offense. We can move. I don't know if Arizona is really that close, though. So like you said, you could go to a team that could win the championship, but there are some that were a lot closer this past year. Cleveland was very close. They basically could have beat the Chiefs. There was that fumble that should have been overturned due to targeting, but with the NFL, who knows what their decisions are? They never make sense. And then Buffalo was right there. So strange. But I don't know if it's really a knock on him. He might have looked at the NFC and just thought, I've been doing the AFC thing for so many years. Let's just go. I was kind of surprised he didn't land with Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, I know he played college up there, so it would have been the natural move to just go back to Wisconsin and be a hero. But maybe after talking with them, they just couldn't work it out. Like, I really don't think it was a money thing. I think he really, whatever teams he had talked with, that was going to be whoever put the best championship pitch together for him. Because they said that he had more money offered elsewhere, and he didn't take it. So, what do you think of Russell Wilson, the other one that came out. Because I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if I sent it to you. But he came out, his agent, again, just like the Ben Roethlisberger agent thing, his agent came out and said, hey, Russell Wilson's not looking for a trade. But if he was, there's a couple of teams that he'd play for, and he listed 4 of them. It was like the Cowboys, and I think the Raiders were one. And so you know that he's looking for a trade. Like anyone could see that.
I think on the heels of Watt signing with Arizona, he said, like, basically, I'm sick of getting hit and running for my life all the time. And so Arizona signs one of the best pass rushers in the league to go. So the people that he is now competing with, Bosa from the Niners, Watt in Arizona, and Aaron Donald with the Rams. So it's like, of course you want to get the hell out of there and get with a team that has some kind of offensive line presence that can protect you.
Well, that's the one where the Seahawks have been close. They have the same issue as the Steelers right now where they get close, they get in the playoffs, and then they always kind of just fade away. So, like, I almost wonder if, I don't know if it's like a coaching thing anymore, because I assume Pete Carroll still knows what's going on, and he's able to make good decisions, except for that, like, 4th down decision in the Super Bowl. I think it was a 4th down, wasn't it? The interception?
Yeah.
But some of it, it's like something has to change. Is it the offense? Is it Russell Wilson coming out on fire, taking a bunch of hits, and then getting worn down? Very similar to Ben Roethlisberger. And I almost wonder if he does go with the change of scenery, how will that affect him? Because, like, even with the Buccaneers, like, if you watch Tom Brady was so focused on getting the ball out, he didn't take a lot of hits. And so when he did, I was, like, shocked, like, oh my gosh, he might not get up from that anytime he got hit, just because most of the time he's just standing there. So going to a different team with Russell Wilson, the way he plays, he's going to keep getting hit. I don't care if they have the best line in the league. He still runs around and tries to extend plays. He got to just do what Tom Brady does and just throw the ball away if you don't want to get hit. Even Ben Roethlisberger holds onto the ball too much. And so when we talk about players needing to take that step where you're getting older in your career, what are you actually doing to win a championship? That's one of the things that I would like to see some of these quarterbacks make that transition. Like, yeah, cool, you might be able to run around. Like, I've seen Aaron Rodgers make some plays late in the season where he's running around crazy, throwing the deep ball and getting the touchdown. It's like, cool, that works sometimes, but not usually against playoff teams. So once you get in the playoffs, you can run around and try to find open men, but most likely you're just going to get smacked in the mouth. And then at the end of the game, you're like not sure what's going on. You're tired of taking hits, but it's like, all right, you've been playing with that all season. Like, that might work against some of the lesser teams you play. Like, cool, Aaron Rodgers, you just ran around and threw a 90-yard touchdown on the Lions. Like, great job. And then he gets to playoffs, and Tampa Bay just keeps crushing him, and he's so scared he's not even going to run it when he has a clear touchdown late in the game in the 4th quarter because he's afraid of getting hit. Like, it's just a different beast. So if he changes teams, are we going to see a different Russell Wilson? Because I think that would be the one thing that Pittsburgh fans should look at. Because like I've said, if Ben was really going to look at other teams, could he have taken a team to the Super Bowl? Like the Redskins or Washington, like the team that I always bring up, to me it looked like they had a good defense. They would have been close. They're supposed to be looking for a quarterback actively. Maybe Garoppolo. They're one of the teams that they said didn't reach out for Deshaun Watson. So Ron Rivera must want more of like a pro-style quarterback, I guess. I don't even know because Watson, he's pretty good in the pocket too. So I'm not sure why Ron Rivera wouldn't want him. Maybe he's just worried about running quarterbacks taking hits. Like maybe because Watson has been hurt in the past. He's had to deal with that with Cam Newton. I don't know. But like the Ben one, I thought that would have been natural for him. And then you could have seen, like, was it a Pittsburgh thing where everyone's too comfortable? Because I'm seeing that with the Penguins now, where it's like everyone's kind of comfortable with themselves. And, like, some guys shouldn't be getting as many minutes. Like, Malkin should be gone. And it's like, what are you doing? And is everyone just kind of hanging around reminiscing? Like, hey, remember when Ben won that Super Bowl? Sweet. Like, hey, great practice today, guys. Here's a picture of me with my ring. Like, perfect. And then that's it. Like, everyone's just happy with it and know that they're going to get fans in the stands or they're going to take that change. Like, you have to make that jump. I don't know. I don't even have anything. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I I don't know. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. But I would say of the teams that they're said they're willing to pull it, it could be Gruden. He could be making it happen, bringing Russell Wilson, and then with the new defensive coordinator, Raiders in the Super Bowl.
Like I said, though, that might get Gruden to the playoffs, but is it going to be enough to make Russell not wear down late in the season? Like, I don't know. We don't know. I would almost be curious. Like, I would have liked to see Ben play somewhere else because I think it would have benefited both parties. Now you're kind of just extending it. And, like, what do? You don't have the salary cap room to start, like, a half rebuild. And you know he's not playing more than another year or two at a high level. Like, if he keeps going on, he's going to end the season hurt or he's going to Eli Manning it. There's no other option, Matt. He's not going to go out on top. Like, if he did, I'd be so pumped and happy for him, but I just don't see it. So, like some of the other guys, like if Russell Wilson is able to move, perfect. Let's see what you can do on a different team. Maybe I wouldn't be shocked if he went to the Raiders and they won the Super Bowl, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he went to another team and they did the same exact thing he's been doing in Seattle. Like, to me, show me what you can do. Are you able to take that next step? Like, Tom Brady leaves, he wins the Super Bowl, no one is surprised, or at least you shouldn't be surprised. He's been doing that his entire career. Like some of these other guys, it's like, okay, you want to change the scenery. What are you going to do there? Le'Veon Bell wanted to change the scenery. He hasn't done anything. So maybe the Steelers can bring him back. And that might be a move where next week on the show, they're talking about signing Bell, and then some excitement comes back because you're like, perfect. That's what Ben needs late in the season is a running back that he can trust and that can get some extra yards. Maybe it didn't work out on the Chiefs or whatever, but you know it worked out in Pittsburgh before. So if he came back and even had half the production on the team last year, I don't think Pittsburgh would have faded down the stretch. But that's just me. Can you bring him in cheap? I don't know. Anything else with the NFL you want to talk about?
No.
I know they were talking about some of like the draft stuff and possibly changing about it, but I don't know what they're doing. Aren't most of the combine stuff, isn't it remote or canceled this year, right?
Yep.
Because that would have been coming up. So aren't there? I think they're just doing small private showings. Because normally we hit around that at this time, but we'll try to give you some updates on the draft type stuff as we get closer to that. Just some other news, like in terms of quarterbacks, they're talking with Dak Prescott about him making a comeback because like he went into that year that he got injured, unfortunately, like in a contract year. Luckily for him, the Cowboys kind of cratered, and you could see that the quarterbacking was a hole. So maybe they bring him back. I wouldn't be shocked. Like, what if they tried to bring in Russell Wilson instead? I don't know. I don't know if it would be any different. But we'll get back into that next week. I don't think I really have anything else. Getting into college football, though, I wanted to hit it on first because we kind of joked around Northwestern and how they were similar to Notre Dame in terms of like bowl appearances, and right on cue, they went ahead and opted out of the EA Sports college football video game. And I saw a lot of people coming up and they're like confused on why they would do this. And I really think that Northwestern and Notre Dame, they're trying to get ahead of it and trying to use the college athletes not getting paid as a way around it. But if I'm being honest, I'm wondering if they just don't understand video games, like their administration. Because if I was a recruit coming in and you're telling me, okay, I could go to Northwestern or I could go to Illinois, and I know Illinois has, like, they're going to have a video game. They're not going to have me in it right away. But what if they sign a deal, like the NCAA says, all right, you can sign players. It's very easy to just go ahead and flip that switch, and then they upload your roster and they send you payments, and then Illinois just starts paying you. Where Northwestern doesn't have any agreement with them. So if the NCAA flips that switch, Northwestern is going to have to negotiate to get back into the game. You would think that EA is going to be kind of pissed at them, like from a business standpoint, like, hey, we tried to bring this game back. We had some big schools like Notre Dame not want to come and help us out. But now they're begging because they know that they're not going to be able to pay their players like other schools are, like their rivals. So I know they're trying to push it out, but to me, I think it's all politics at this point, and I think that they're trying to mislead. Because Notre Dame's going to get paid if they're in the game. Notre Dame didn't stop making Notre Dame T-shirts and athletic apparel, did they? Hell no, Matt. Hell no. Did they stop taking athletic donations until this gets sorted out? Hell no. But they're hurting the one thing that could be an easy path in for athletes on the team. Because all it takes is one flip of the switch. EA Sports says, all right, we had like fans already are working on this anyway. Their site's still updating the rosters for 2014. They could instantly bring that game back on whatever the backwards compatible Xbox or whatever and update the rosters, and you could play. All EA Sports has to do is flip that switch. And right now, these schools are taking it out of their hands. And so if you're an incoming athlete, that would be the turning point where it's like, they're not even battling for me right now. They're pretending to, but at this point, it's all talk. Like, are they doing anything to get me the money? No. Are they actively sabotaging it? Yes, they are, man. Do you have an opinion on it?
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Trying to just sit on the fence, and I mean, from the EA side, I'm sure for them it's just as easy as flipping a switch and having them queued up and ready to go, knowing that if they have the paid players that they'd get, all right, we're in, and it's just political, whatever you want to call it.
And I mean, and I'm not really a big EA Sports guy because I hate some of the stuff that they put in. We've talked about it on the show, but I'm definitely in their corner here because now they have to mess around with their bullshit like scheduling instead of like their sim part where you could have conferences and you have to build conferences. Now they have to put a generic Northwestern team in, like a Chicago, just random Chicago. Do they make another team, or do they just not have a team there at all? Because like you don't even want to open yourself up to a lawsuit. So then does the Big Ten only have 13 teams? How does your sim work? Are you going to have teams on a bye? Like if you're a Big Ten team in the West, like Northwestern opting out messes up the entire game when they're trying to get people in. Is it going to be like it's not going to be realistic? And Notre Dame, I think, is an easier out because they're independent. So you could just ignore them, just like some people do in real life. If you don't turn on NBC, you don't even know that Notre Dame exists until they lose their bowl game. So it's like, okay, like let's see what happens. I just think that schools, they don't understand it. And so they just are making decisions and trying to spin it so that it's a positive for student athletes. Because it's very easy to not do something and just say like, oh, well, we need clarification on paying players at this point. And if you think that I'm being too harsh, listen to some of the Congress stuff when they talk about technology and like Facebook hearing. These guys don't even know how it works at all. Like they don't even know like the account, the security stuff. So you're telling me these guys at the university making the decisions on like the athletics level, they're looking at this and they're saying, okay, we got the offer from EA Sports. It's whatever. They're thinking, oh, we could push for more. Let's try to hold out. EA Sports probably said, nope, that's our final offer. And so Notre Dame probably opted out, and like they called their bluff, and then they said, okay, well, we're going to opt out. Northwestern, on the other hand, probably waited and saw Notre Dame did it, and they were like, oh yeah, we'll do the same thing. Like anyone that does it first does it for a reason. And Notre Dame has always been about the money. It's not about the athletes. It's not about making it easier for them. Otherwise, they would have just joined a conference at this point. Because now they're having to travel all over the world with their independent schedule. And it's not a benefit to the athlete. That's not a benefit at all. They're making less money in NBC for what? Flexibility? So they can pick their schedule? I don't know. So that's my thing when I'm looking at it. I don't think that it was a good thing. It looks like Matt broke off. I'm going to try to bring it back in here. If you're able to hear that. Where is it? All right. You back? I got you?
Yeah, you got me.
So I'm wondering if other teams are going to jump in, is where I'm ending with this, Matt. Because like I'm worried that as a Michigan guy, Michigan sees this and they say, you know what, we're going to opt out. The one thing that makes it a little bit clearer for me is the state of Michigan, like they passed that law where they're able to start selling likeness. It's very easy to have an athlete come in and say, like, look, we're in the game already. Do you want to put your name in it? You get like $100 or whatever. Because like a lot of people only got $5 checks when the last one was rolled out. But it's better than nothing. And it's a starting point. Because you put your name in 1 year as a freshman, and each year you sign that contract. So they come in and they say, like, all right, this year you get $500 and your name is actually in the game, which I think is big for recruits. Because even like NFL players, they still look at their Madden ratings every year. Like, could you imagine if you're a 5-star quarterback coming in, they rate you like a 68? You'd be like, no way, son. Like, that's not going to happen. But if you're not playing at all, then you're not going to be in. And so you're going to be behind. So I wonder if other teams, like, I would hope that a lot of teams are just scared not to, because that's where you get a lot of teams like Oregon, where they were doing cutting edge stuff. Like 20, 30 years ago, Oregon wasn't a big time school, man. Like they weren't competing for national championships, let's be honest, in football anyway. Like it wasn't until like the Joey Harrington, like he was on the front of the game, and they started to like really push that. I guess more of like 20 years ago they started to do that, because I'm forgetting how long ago that was. Like in the 90s and the 80s when they started the Nike stuff, they weren't really a national brand. They started changing their jerseys. They started doing all this other crazy stuff, pushing for video games, pushing for other things, pushing for technology. And then guess what? The younger crowd catches on with that and they see it. Some other teams, like one that stands out to me is Virginia Tech, because I saw, I think it was a wide receiver recruit or something that was choosing between Virginia Tech and maybe Ohio State. And maybe I'm misreading it, but one of the Virginia Tech commentators said that if that receiver would have went to Virginia Tech, it would have been their highest recruit in like 15 years. It was a 4-star receiver, Matt. It wasn't like the 10th best player on Ohio State's current recruiting class, but that would have been the best for Virginia Tech, because when they had all the hype and the Mike Vick years, they never capitalized. Like they never helped, like they never started marketing themselves. They kind of just fell off. And everyone was like, oh yeah, they're the lunch pail team. You know, coming in, they were trying to be like the Penn State, where we come in, work hard, we don't really promote ourselves. And then guess what? Kids don't care. Recruits aren't going to go play for you. Like, who even are you? So that's my final thing. As spring practice begins, because some schools, like Texas, is having their own internal beef with their fight song, and some players now, they're getting the pressure because boosters are apparently reaching out to some of their players saying like, hey, if you don't follow whatever our traditions are, you're not going to have any jobs whenever you graduate, which is crazy to me. Basically like intimidating them. I saw a couple players posted on Twitter if you want to look it up. But that's the next level. because those same guys are going to be the ones that are cutting checks to pay players. And guess what? Texas, you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you don't modernize and start making yourself more marketable to younger athletes, Oklahoma's going to run the Big 12, and then you'll probably join the Big 10 at a later date, like Nebraska. And by that time, your brain will be so hurt. It will be like Nebraska right now, where they're like, do we want to go back to the Big 12? And it's like, what is the point? We can't even compete in the Big 10 West. Like, you're going to go back to the Big 12 and, like, what, miraculously beat Oklahoma? Like, they're so far ahead of you. Like, you guys aren't even beating, like, Minnesota and stuff. Northwestern, like, how are you going to go ahead and go back to the Big 12 and be successful? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So a lot of teams and a lot of schools, I think, they make the short-term decision. They don't understand it. And so they're like, oh, we're just going to do this because it's a safer option right now. And that's it. But that's my college football thing that I wanted to talk about. Did you have anything else for college football?
Surprisingly, the North Dakota State Bison have their 9-game win streak snapped over the weekend. And it didn't look pretty either, because I did unfortunately cave and went with the ESPN Plus streaming so that I could get that game, and was actually surprised that they were upset.
Well, that's one of the ones that stood out to me, and that was going to be part of my, like, final bell or whatever. But looking at this, it was like unbelievable that they've had such a big winning streak. I don't know if I can't remember if we talked about it on the show or if I was talking with someone else off the show, but we were talking about how they were going after, like, Oklahoma's winning record, a win streak or whatever, and if, like, it was even going to be, like, focused on or even mentioned, like, on the big stage, because lower level, like, who cares? But now it's like it doesn't even matter. You come out and just get blown out. That, what a weird way to end it. Like, it's just crazy to me that,
Well,
I don't
and
know.
I think this ties in with your Virginia Tech talk. You look at what's happening, like in the FCS level. James Madison was they were the runner up last year in the championships, losing to North Dakota State. At this point now, they're the number one team in the country in the FCS level. So you have them on an uptick, and now, like, within the state of Virginia, you're also competing with Liberty now, and Hugh Freeze has Liberty humming with their recruiting, and there's so much marketing being able to be done with their program that I think that's also hurting them too. Is that there's so much talent being played at these other schools that it's just pulling away from them.
Well, I'll say this even too, and I mean, basically, we're into the final bell point here. I was going to bring up the North Dakota State, but I know it was like probably a decade ago we were discussing, like, just the way Virginia Tech was going and how East Carolina might have had a chance to join, like, the SEC when they were expanding, because they were on an uptick, and they had, I mean, they probably had, what was a long time ago, maybe Skip Holtz. I can't remember who their coach was.
Yeah.
But they were on an upswing, and they were locking down, like, the Virginia Tidewater area that Virginia Tech had locked down in recruiting. And I said that would be a big get for, like, the SEC. And instead, SEC went with Missouri. And everyone was kind of like, yeah, they don't really want a directional school. They would have rather taken, like, NC State. I don't know if they ever talked to them or what, but they wanted, like, a bigger state name. So, like, East Carolina's location, and that really hurt them. But then after that fell through, you would think that they were going to push up to, like, the UCF level, and they never did. And then Virginia Tech also fell off. So I almost wonder, did recruiting go down there? Like, did it stop? I don't know. Did the talent level fall off? Did more people shift to basketball? Because, like, a lot of teams that recruited heavily in that area now, they've been on a downswing. Even some of, like, the Eastern teams that used to have solid talent, it just seems like it's not there anymore. So maybe some of the effects of like the negative football talk and like, hey, we're not going to have our kids play football. Maybe you're starting to see that because the Virginia region would be one where you're so close to DC. A lot of recruits are going to come from that area down through the Tidewater area. If they're getting pushed into other sports now because of the safety issue, that's going to hurt the whole state. And so are those schools going to recruit on a national level? No. In comes Liberty, that if they continue to win, and with the money that's being thrown at that program, I wouldn't even be shocked if they were competing with like a Notre Dame within 10 years, just like a national. We're a bigger name. We're bigger than our area. Come play for us. We'll play anybody. And if they can keep Hugh Freeze there, why not?
And if you're Hugh Freeze, why would you leave?
Because, I mean, that would be my thing. Because, like, you've already been pushed out of a school. You had a big time, which reminds me, there was another comment. Someone was shocked that a head coach, I think he was at like a black historical college, I can't remember, turned down an assistant gig with Nick Saban to stay the head coach. And I thought, like, how disrespectful of an article is this, that you would think that being an assistant, maybe the pay's better, but giving up your head coaching gig to be an assistant is just like, that's a step down no matter how you swing it. Like maybe Nick Saban can get you a step up if you're using it as a stepping stone, but you have a much better chance to just stay a head coach and work your way up and learn that way, I would think, than jumping around to be an assistant. So it's just weird the way college football is covered these days. I don't know. So with Liberty, they're going to be fighting an uphill battle because a lot of people hate them for whatever reason, religious reasons or whatever. But the way the money that they're getting thrown in there with the alumni base, if their endowment keeps raising, which it seems to be, it's jumping a lot of schools that I've seen. Usually facilities and things fall with that. That now with like the online stuff, which they were already leading in that in terms of online programs and stuff that were accredited, I believe. Why not? Why not push it? And like Virginia Tech will never recover. They will never recover. I'll put that on record right now. Virginia has been recruiting well. They've been competing. Even North Carolina, when they're recruiting well, like I talked about, they had a great season. I didn't even realize that their record was 3 losses. Everyone talked about it like it was one of the greatest seasons of all time. But maybe with the talent and the other teams, like they're not going to pull other recruits from Florida or whatever. Maybe that is their greatest season that they can have. I don't know. So that's what I'll end it with. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, the big thing I had was to thank everyone for continuing to support us in these COVID times. That hopefully you're tuning in and staying safe, and check out our website because we got a lot of good stuff on there, and keep you entertained and safe.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, getting still crazy good downloads. So I appreciate that. Like I said, we do record on Tuesdays. We've been streaming it on Facebook Live. So you can check that out Tuesday nights, usually around 9:15, somewhere in there we go live. If you want to hear the show as it breaks. But keep downloading the audio only. And if there's other things you want me to throw in, let me know. I mean, sometimes like last week, it's tough for me. I could throw in a little extra audio at the beginning, like, hey, just a heads up. We talked about this, but with sports, there's a lot of time. It's hard to break some of the live stories. I've thought about doing like shorter shows maybe, or something a little bit extra whenever like Steelers are in season or something. But if you're interested in that, or like a separate like just college football thing, let us know because I'd like to hear from that. So thanks for your support. Go to southboundsports.com. Make sure you follow the shows, and we will see you next week.